Hi, so this video is for anybody that's trying to do glass Christmas ornaments in their P3 using the RA3 or not. Let's get into it. So these are the ornaments that I got. They are Ashland brand from Michael's Crafts. They're 2.5-inch baubles. These ones are satin instead of shiny. They were out of the shiny ones when I went to go get them. Your settings may vary if you have the shiny ones, but it should track pretty closely. So let's get them put into the P3 and into your RA3 and take a look at our setup. So I'm going to take a big leap here and assume that anyone that has their P3 with an RA3 has already connected it to their machine and understands at least how it works. So I'm going to go over actually mounting an ornament in here. I have my soft small jaws on here, and I am just going to get my ornament lightly held in the chuck, and then I'm going to bring my tailstock in close by, raise it up until the cone is roughly in the center, and then lock that down. Then I'm going to manually rotate this just to make sure that we're not jumping way high and our center line is pretty accurate. Which that looks pretty good. So now, with that all set, we can jump into the computer. So now that we have our ornament mounted in our RA3, next step is to open up our xTool Studio, and we're going to create a new project. We're going to make sure that once it loads up, our P3 is connected, we see everything, and we're going to switch our process mode to using the chuck. Alright, next thing that's really important is understanding the size of your ornament. This would be the same if you were doing any kind of cup or any kind of manual process. You need to know the size of what you're trying to engrave. So, take your bauble. If you don't know what it is, get your RA3 kit, which they provided a nice cloth tape measure, and take your tape around the center of your ornament, and you'll find that mine, a 2.5-inch bauble, is 205 millimeters around. So, under the manual mode here, I am going to set a perimeter of 205 millimeters, and now we need to set our distance. That is the point in which you want to engrave. So I have had the best luck by setting this to kind of dead center of the ornament, because I want to put my engravings kind of in the dead center. So that's getting me the best focus. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit our precise measure. We're going to do the move to bring the laser head over, and then we are going to get our laser positioned. So that brought it fairly close, so I like to jump this down to like 5 millimeter increments, and I am going to bring my laser dead center to my workpiece. Alright, so at this point, now that the laser is kind of in the dead center of your ornament, we can hit measure. And that gave us a measurement of 72.8 millimeters. Which, that's about pretty consistent with everything that I've run. And I've run like 24 of these ornaments so far in all of my testing. And since I don't want to go super far to the extent top or bottom of the bauble, I'm going to actually leave my measurement there so that some people have been adjusting that focus either up or down to try and counteract some of the focus height issues. I'm not really having any of those right now, so what I'm going to do next is I am going to jump in and I'm going to grab my light string. There is my graphic, which this is an SVG that I actually prepared earlier in Adobe Illustrator because I prefer to use Illustrator than the inbuilt tools, which inbuilt tools are fine, I just don't know the controls very well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place this somewhere about there, which looks kind of similar up to the top. Well, we'll see. Alright, so next we are going to come down and we're going to hit the framing button. This is the most important thing you can do to make sure that you are engraving in the spot that you want to engrave. So now you need to press our process button and we're going to see where it frames. So that is a huge framing area. So we're going to go back in. We are then going to take our design and we're going to nudge it just a little bit because you saw we were way off. And we're going to then run our framing again. This time, that's pretty centered on the ornament. I think this design's a little bit too wide. So framing is complete. I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to unlink this. I'm going to change my width to like 35 millimeters. And we're going to try that framing again. And really it is a game of doing your framing and just constantly nudging and checking before you actually run your cut path. Alright, so now that our framing is complete and we're happy with that location, yeah, the graphic needs some work. I understand that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select my graphic. I'm going to set it to engrave, and I'm going to set my material to, I think, a 5/32 4mm high temperature glass. I don't think that really matters, but I have found if I give it a power of about 8, speed of 100, and on the power it's somewhere in between 5 and 8. I haven't totally dialed it in. I did a photograph yesterday at 8 that looked great. I've done text at 5 that's come out also great. I think it really depends on your design, so you might need to do a little bit of playing with it. But I'm going to run this at about 8, and then I'm going to bump this up to 200 lines per centimeter, and I am going to hit process. Okay, so our engrave has finished. Let's take a look at it. Okay. So, you can see we have a fully engraved bauble. Alright, so you can see we have a fully engraved bauble, and it worked. It's a continuous engraving, and it looks pretty good. Even though I skewed the design in the software, honestly, turned out pretty good. A couple of spots it got a little bit too much of the glass engraved, so I would probably think running this again if I were selling this one, and dropping this down to like a 5% on the power rather than keeping it at 8. But again, this was a solid black engrave and not a grayscale image, so so what we can do now is I am going to pull the RA3 out of my P3 and set up to do a engrave of a logo directly on the same ornament and show you that whole process. So let's jump back into the P3 and I'll show you my setup. So RA3 comes out, put that off to the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my clamped slats. So I've got a couple of these in certain positions. Now, I'm going to bring in my 3D printed jig for Christmas ornaments. And you're probably thinking, where do I get a 3D printed jig for Christmas ornaments? Well, you 3D print it. So the reality of it is, I have found these jigs available for mainly the F-series lasers, but they are available on Printables, Thingiverse, MakerWorld, literally every one of the print repositories has these files. I've found that the 65mm bauble size works for the 2.5-inch baubles. So we're going to put our bauble in. I like this dip right here in the pattern. So that is the point that I am going to align to the center. Because I want to put my pattern, my logo, right in this area. Alright, with the ornament in and aligned, we can close our lid. We can now jump back into our computer and do a curved surface mapping on this ornament. So jumping back into xTool Studio, what we can do is we can come over and we can change our mode to curved surface, and we can actually ignore our previous output because we don't want to engrave that design, but I don't really want to lose that design. So now I'm going to go into my ornament designs. Alright, with our text in here now, I'm going to put that off to the side. We are going to come up and we're going to do our curved measure. You're going to want to look into your laser. Again, we're going to be focusing a beam on our subject, and let's jump into the laser. We're going to choose our first spot that we want this logo to appear. I would say mark that. And then we're going to choose our end spot for our grid. It's a little far. And let's mark that. Okay, and then we are going to map this. And I have been doing a 10 by 10 map, because why not? The laser head is just mapping this out, point by point. Alright, so now that we have our map, you can see on here our area that we told the measurement to go. I'm going to hit done. And you can see that our workspace area shrunk to a tiny, tiny size. The cool part is that that tiny, tiny size is exactly where we mapped out on the ornament. And since we mapped out an area that specifically is called out for that design, we can then place our design within that and know that we're going to fall pretty closely into that area that we measured out. Now, I am going to, again, utilize the framing section, and we're going to run the frame, and we're going to see what it looks like. Oh, that's not bad. Alright, so I am going to say my framing is complete. I'm okay with my positioning. We are going to go into our graphic. We're going to hit Engrave because we don't want to score it. We are going to take our power. This time I'm going to run it at a 5, run it at 100 for speed, and give it a 200 lines per centimeter. And I'm going to hit process. Alright, our nozzle's off. Everything's good. We're going to hit start. And we are going to hit go. While that's running, the thing I should have done is I should have flattened all of that to an image rather than running it as text, vector-based text. That way the machine doesn't process it all one letter at a time and actually will run it full lines back and forth, run it a lot faster. It probably will come out better one letter at a time, but running it as a flattened image probably will speed things up significantly. Alright, so the process is finished. Let's go ahead, let's hit finish in xTool. We can move our computer and we can take a look at it. And I would say that turned out pretty darn good for what we're looking for. So our final step with our ornament would be to get some acrylic white paint, drop it in the top, roll it around, dump out the excess, let it dry, put our little topper on, and you're good to go. So I hope this helps. Good luck.